Hi, and you're listening to the Mind Fruit podcast, bringing you mental health and well-being promotion to help you live your best life.
All information discussed on this podcast is research and evidence-based. However, it is ultimately the opinions of the Mind Fruit podcast, and this is not a substitute to seeking professional medical advice.
Hi guys, hope you're all doing okay. It's just me today. Fran isn't feeling 100% and we've got to practice what we preach. If you aren't feeling it, then you just aren't feeling it. We're not perfect either, and we've got to just do what we've got to do for our own health, haven't we? So I've been wanting to address this COVID-19 and lockdown just because it's had such a big impact on everyone's lives. Like, I don't know anybody who hasn't been affected by it. A lot of people would say, oh, well, I'm a bit of a boring person anyway. But you've got to be lying if this hasn't affected anybody around the world. You know, this has just changed our lives completely, almost overnight, unless you lived in Sweden or a place where it didn't really affect society. And I think most of it, especially the lockdown, as much as people try and defend it, none of us have had a very good time adjusting to it and adjusting to all the rules and regulations and changes and restrictions. The whole coronavirus thing and COVID hit me and Fran quite slowly. We were in Thailand at the time. We met up with one of my friends who lives over there, and he was saying, well, the stock market's just crashed. You know, we're in for a bit of a rough ride with this one. He'd just watched the Joe Rogan podcast with Michael Osterholm, and he's predicted it's going to change the world. And me and Fran were laughing our heads off. You know, you hear of bird flu, swine flu, SARS, Ebola, just another one of those passing frenzies that comes into circulation for a little bit. People worry, and then it's over before you know it. Like with Tamiflu, everyone was going to get the bird flu vaccine, and then it was over. It was just like a flash in the pan, if you know what I mean. In Thailand, they were wearing face covers in the streets, and me and Fran were like, oh, that's a bit weird, but they've just kind of had the Chinese New Year, so people from China must have been there as tourists. So it's understandable that Thailand are going to be a bit more cautious because China is one of their biggest sources of tourism. We were watching the news every now and again just to see what was going on, to keep ourselves updated. We never watched the news any other time, but we were following social media quite a bit when we were out there, because, you know, that's the only connection to you when you're halfway around the world and a pandemic starting. It's a bit hard. So Flybe went bust, and it was a kind of sign to me that I knew full well that free movement would be in question. And we didn't know how bad it was, but first noticed there was something completely different when we'd go on a train or a bus or in a taxi or something, and when you sneeze or cough, which is a normal bodily reaction thing to do, people would move out the way. Like they'd literally just dive out the way from something that you've already put into the air. It just makes me laugh because people would just like coming up with silly reasons to why they were coughing, why they were sneezing. Oh, I've had a bit of a tickle in my throat. It's not the Rona. So one of the people I worked with, she was saying, oh, well, you're in Asia, so you're going to have to isolate for 2 weeks. And I thought, yeah, that'd be great. I've had 2 weeks holiday and then another 2 weeks off. Yeah, I didn't understand what isolating meant, so I was a bit naive about that one. But I think towards the end of the first week, I just turned off my phone completely and thought, no, we're going to have the holiday of our dreams in Thailand, knowing that we're going to have to go back to a country was probably the complete opposite to the laid-back paradise that Thailand is. So we went to Chumphan, we got the ferry over to Koh Phangan, and then got the ferry over to Koh Samui, and then got the plane back to Bangkok and stayed a few nights exploring Bangkok a bit more. And the whole thing, especially the islands, the beauty of that place, it is paradise. And that's why they call it the land of smiles, because to me, the energy is just, it is phenomenal. Like the people, the culture. So if you look at someone and you don't smile, then it's as if you're kind of being rude in a sense. So a lot of the time, if you make eye contact, you smile. So you just find yourself smiling the whole time. It's an experience that I would recommend to anybody if they had the opportunity to go. It is a promised land. Well, to me it is anyway. But my life has never been the same since the first time I went, and a friend kind of paid for my flight to go. I wouldn't have had that opportunity to go when I was younger if it weren't for him, and I had the most amazing time. It was a boys' holiday, and yeah, it was a bit different to the one that me and Fran had, but yeah, it was fantastic. Made some really good friends out of it as well that'll last a lifetime, and they're just memories I'll never forget. So knowing you're coming from a place like that to going back to a place where it's inevitable we're going to be locked down for a while. And you usually have post-holiday blues, but this was a different story. Like, forced ourselves to get on the plane, and the flight over to the stopover weren't too bad. We just fell asleep for most of it. But then we got to the stopover airport, and they lined us up, took out our passports, copied our passports, and took us into a room which was very clinical, and a lot of these strangers you didn't even know. So they photocopy your passport, give you a swab, and you have to go into a cubicle. They make you fill out these forms to say if you've had symptoms of sore throat, cough, sneezing, high temperature or fever. And then the bloke takes out the swab and, without even asking, just puts it up your nose, like so far up it's probably touching the brain or something. It felt really invasive, and I just thought, that's violating my human rights. Like, I didn't ask for that. I didn't consent for that. And I said to him, does everyone have to do this? And he said, yes, sir. And like, no one was asking questions. Everyone was just kind of lining up to get this swab that they didn't even know about beforehand. No one told us that we had to have anything. And kind of, Fran was in the background saying, Carl, just do it. We need to get home. Just do it. And I'm there just feeling absolutely violated. Like, my nose is absolutely stinging. And I'm just thinking, well, where was my human rights there? I think I know I'm in a different country, but surely it's universal. You've just forced me to have something pushed up my orifices that I didn't even ask for. That's violation. So we got home and we were notified that kind of you have to stay in the same room and you have to kind of stay away from your family members. Stay away from the family members you're even living with. So from having a beautiful experience on holiday to staying in a room that you can't leave made me feel really low. And I know a lot of people get post-holiday blues, but this was a different scale. To me, I just thought, I want to be back there. There's nowhere else I'd rather be right now but Thailand. I could have stayed there. I wish, and Fran says this all the time, like, we wish that the plane was cancelled, and we just stayed over there and made a living over there because I think mentally we'd be so much better off. But I said to Fran, we need to really work on ourselves this year because she was just qualifying to be an OT. She was just about to get a new job, and we made a pact together to say that we'd really, really work on ourselves this year and move out, do all the things that we said we were going to do. And there were so many goals that we'd achieved, and we just thought, no, we're not going to let ourselves be victims here. We're going to live life as normal as possible and make the most of it. And yet I don't believe in a lot of the stuff or the way that it was kind of approached by the government and things, but you've got to adapt and you've got to make the most of the time that you've got left here, because I think even if you're not scared of it, even if you're not in fear of COVID and, the pandemic, it really kind of puts your mortality under a microscope and makes you think, well, I'm not here forever, so if life wasn't the party you came here for, then why not dance anyway? We've got to make the most of what we've got. We've got to savour those little moments that we do have. So it just put a lot of things in perspective for me and kind of made me push everything I have into the passions that I have. I think a lot of people had to dig deep to just find what made them happy. So if you take consumerism out of the mix, you take vanity out of the mix, you take most of the social structures that we've got out of the mix, and you realised how shallow and how easily deconstructed these social systems actually are. Like, these economies can be collapsed at any minute. If you're living in a world that's so easily ripped from you, then it doesn't mean anything. So I kind of went a bit more creative in looking to my guitar as like an expression of what my human experience is. So most of the time, writing songs and playing covers in a band, I would always either find myself playing, I'd pick up my guitar or my bass guitar and start playing what I thought someone else wanted to hear. But having that time and space to myself, that I wasn't influenced by other people, other musicians, other people's opinions and their styles of playing, it kind of brought me into a more spiritual place, like in a flow state. When I was playing my guitar, it was more like an extension of me. Whenever I picked up my guitar, there'd be a new song, a new riff, and it's been amazing for my ideas. It helped me fall in love with music again, and I really learned how to be comfortable with myself in a flow state, just writing music for me. And I think this was intensified because of my frustrations of not being able to get to a gym or to kind of exercise as I would like to do. Because, going on a walk or going on a bit of a run, doing a bit of a home workout, it's not really what I was interested in doing. I just wanted to really lift heavy weights, and that's usually how I get my frustration out. But I felt myself kind of going into my guitar a lot more for them stress relieving states. I was doing night shifts, so when I'd have a night off, I'd sleep through the day and then stay up through the night and just write, but obviously silently with a electric guitar, so it doesn't make really any sound. I was doing it downstairs as well, and just really getting to terms with how different my creativity was. I was finding different styles of music that I've never been interested in jazz before, and that really became kind of a stable base for what I'd write my music on, which is it's an odd thing for me to kind of admit, because I've always been a rocker and jazz is always kind of a bit too formal, if you know what I mean, for writing music. But I got really interested in lo-fi hip hop music, so that's kind of based on a hip hop beat with kind of a jazz feel, but then everything EQ'd to a very low frequency, so it'd be kind of like as if you were hearing it off a cassette tape. And it's been really quite popular with people who work from home, because they've got more control of what they listen to in the office, and this sort of music can kind of bring on more productivity with writing. A lot of people use it for, well, especially a lot of students use it for writing assignments. It's just easier when you've got music that doesn't have any lyrics behind them. It just helps you get into a better state of mind, because you're not thinking about what the lyrics are saying, and they're not distracting you from the words you're actually trying to write, if you know what I mean. So I'd just stand there doing the washing up on my days off for hours, really slowly, just watching out the window, watching this video with lo-fi music on, watching the world go by, and it's like background music. I absolutely loved it because it just helped me feel comfortable, sometimes it'll bring up emotions. Like, they're usually very short songs, probably about 2 minutes, and they can probably take you through 4 or 5 different emotions throughout the time that you're listening to them, just by the way something sounds, by the way it feels going. It's usually a loop that's going over and over with different little bits added in, and I just found it really relaxing. And if I was to go to a nap, within probably about 2 or 3 tracks, I'd be absolutely fast asleep. And I found my music taste on what I could be listening to had changed completely, just because I didn't really follow much of what was going on in the charts in kind of popular culture. I was just kind of searching for a lot of different alternative stuff that I wouldn't usually listen to. And broadening your horizons, it's always a really good thing, because you don't know what you're missing out on if you haven't tried that music before. Like, for a long time, I'd say up until my late 20s, I was blinkered with what I'd listened to. Yeah, I'd listened to quite a good range of things, but there'd be quite a few genres that I would kind of say a hard no to. But I think sometimes that just comes with age, and you stop trying to be cool, and you form less opinions and judgments on yourself when you kind of breaking these boundaries. And there's just no point in closing yourself off to something when you don't know if you even like it or not. You know, sometimes I'll say, oh no, I don't listen to any of that because that's not, what I like. But if I actually sat down and listened to it, then I might like some parts of that genre. A genre is just a genre because someone pigeonholed them into that. Sometimes they don't even fit into that genre, but because a famous DJ say that they fit into that genre, then I could speak about music all day. There's a few things that I'll speak about which have helped me, and definitely, like, through personal growth, I've watched a lot of informative videos or documentaries, kind of just trying to expand my knowledge. I've been doing a lot of research on medical journals and trying to up my knowledge that way, because you probably will never have this time again to really delve into these subjects. And sometimes you just find yourself a bit bored, and I think I'm just going to take my mind this way for a bit. So we did a bit of a question and answer, and a few people said that they watched back-to-back Game of Thrones and Tiger King. That was kind of a show that everyone was talking about at one point. I still haven't seen that. I still can't even comment on that because I haven't seen it. I think Fran will agree with me here. We just don't watch popular stuff. We'll watch something that was popular 3 years ago. We'll be quite late to the bandwagon a lot of the time. We'll probably end up liking it, but it'll take us a while to actually watch it or do something like that. But Disney Plus definitely dropped at the right time, didn't it? Like, we've played Moana and Frozen 2 to death. Most of the time we watch Moana before we go to sleep, and it's still on until we, wake up the next day, sometimes just on repeat. So yeah, they are one of the things that have really helped us. I think Disney have got that kind of charm of, it can just help you get away from stuff, can't it? It can just help you live in a different world for a little while. And I think a lot of people go through that with books. Just become a different character. We use so much for escapism, but a lot of the time we're not savouring the moment. Like my friend said the other day, you can think about work after you've done what you're trying to escape. Savour that moment for a bit. You might not even get this time again to be able to take that break from work, and being asked to and being paid to take that time off work. It's a godsend for some people. The people who have the opportunity to do that, don't waste it. Another person said that they were relying on games to kind of get them through the day. So they'd turn on a game and that would pass the day. It would pass the time that they were thinking about stuff, ruminating on stuff, and kind of having a bad time in their lives, but they could just put on a game and just check out of life. And people give the gaming society quite a bit of a negative light, when sometimes it's just escapism, like everything else, like music, like books, like TV. We're all just trying to get out of this life, just check out for a little while, and that's all right. That's normal. That's just kind of daydreaming, if you will. And a lot of people would be lying if they said that they didn't do this, that they didn't escape. People who say that they're completely motivated, completely focused on what's going on in their life, they still have to visualize stuff. Like biggest athletes, they still have to escape sometimes, and sometimes they use their fitness and their kind of what they're trying to achieve. Sometimes they have to use that as their escape. Just because we're doing stuff that doesn't feel productive to us, if that gives you your own well-being, then power to it. Just keep on doing what makes you feel good. Obviously, a lot of people did a bit too much of that, especially at the start of it, when they kind of found they had a lot more free time and they was drinking a lot more alcohol, and losing a bit of vision of kind of where the life was going. Doing what makes you feel good, and knowing that kind of it's a detriment to you if you take it too far, then obviously try and avoid that as much as you can. But yeah, I think I just wanted to sum up the year of 2020, because it's just been such a roller coaster of a ride. You had Black Lives Matter, you had a lot of things that were really kind of pushing everyone to make a positive change in the world, to see things from a different point of view, a different angle. A lot of the social structures are kind of broken down at the minute, so there's opportunity for a fair playing ground. We've got the opportunity to make a better world. We've got that fighting spirit that every human has got, and we just need to find it deep inside and realise that we're all the same. We're all here trying to get through life as best as we know how. We can only work with what we're given, with what we know, and what we're trying to find out. We just need to understand each other a bit more. If you don't know where someone's coming from, please don't try and make that assumption, because it can do a lot more damage than it can good. And a bombardment from the media who are not reporting the facts properly. And I think to have such a voice to billions of people, you need to have a duty of care there, especially when it comes to healthcare and fear of people's lives. The facts need to be reported appropriately, don't they? Well, at least you'd think. I know I'm going to probably rub people up the wrong way about speaking with the media like this, but they need to have a responsibility to what they're putting out there, or at least how it's delivered, because some people are so afraid and so anxious that they'll probably never live life the same again. You need to be really sensitive on people's fears, and it is just dredging up a lot of deep-rooted traumas. The reason why it's affected a lot of people negatively mentally is because the media has handed us the weapons saying you're selfish, or you won't fit into society if you don't have this, or you don't do this, or you don't wear that. That's an abusive relationship. That is somebody telling you what you can't do, what you have to wear, and you'll be imprisoned and you won't be a member of society if you do otherwise. So what I'm challenging you to do is have a little bit of compassion, have a little bit of empathy on the street. Say when you see someone not wearing a mask or not wearing a face cover, just think of why they might not be doing that. 1, it's their human right. 2, they could be going through some trauma. Imagine if you had a phobia of spiders or a phobia of heights. Imagine seeing that, and imagine experiencing that every time you leave the house, every time you go to the shops, every time you go to the pub, every time you go anywhere. Your trauma is there in front of you. You shouldn't be expected to wear a spider on your face or, jump from a highest height. You shouldn't be expected to if that's what your fear is. And no one's going to force you to do that, because that's why there's exemptions. But for some reason, we've become divided. We should probably be focusing more on helping, trying to give back, and maybe smiling at someone to help them get through the day that they're having, because we're all having a really tough time at the moment, and we're just trying to get through this hard period as much as we can. And with other people trying to force their opinions on you, it's not healthy. So I think one of the biggest things that happened in 2020 was the suicide of Caroline Flack, and everyone was saying be kind. And I know there's a lot of people who are a lot more connected now, but if I can get someone to kind of think of things from a different point of view than they might have not done any other time, then I'm happy with that, because it means that I've provoked thought, and that needs to be done a lot more, not just going along with what somebody tells you to think. Actually try and filter out the information that's trying to come in, because you can't believe everything that you hear or see, can you? And a lot of people tell you not to have these conversations and, to just kind of avoid it because it's kind of awkward. But if we don't have these conversations and we don't have these kind of discussions, then we open ourselves up to a lot of manipulation and just kind of going with a common goal when you don't have to. There's always a choice. If there's a choice that you have to do something, then there's always a choice that you don't have to do something. Things aren't as black and white in this world, and you do have a choice. We're all free, sovereign human beings, and no one can take that away from us. If someone's trying to, then they're probably doing it from quite a controlling way. So I'm just asking for people to think before they let someone do something or try something, because you do have a choice. You have a voice. Everybody does. Just use it. Stand up for what you believe in. And if there's anyone that tries to tell you different, try and engage the conversation. Don't just close it off because they don't think the same thing as you. Just try and have a little bit more of an open mind, because you never know what the other person's thinking. So be kind. Thank you for listening. And if this information was valuable to you, or you think it might be for somebody else, then like, comment or share. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. To get more of this content, hit that subscribe button. And if you're watching on YouTube, ring that bell. It'll notify you every time we upload.
Check out our weekly blog at mind-fruit.co.uk. We hope to see you next week for Wellbeing Wednesday.